This week, I wanted to do something different. I have zero podcasting experience, but I do have aspirations, a small network, and the ability to take rejection when reaching out to people and they just ghost me. So today, I wanted to go over the numbers and just share how I've been able to get 40,000 views and 200 hours of watch time in the first 6 weeks of having a podcast. And these numbers are just the YouTube stats. I'm also on Spotify, TikTok, Facebook, and Apple Podcasts. But YouTube is my home. It's where I feel like the most committed viewers are, and it's where I feel like the best community building occurs. Starting this podcast has been one of the coolest things that I've ever done professionally, and it's given me the opportunity to network with people who I never would have met before. At this point, I've filmed 6 full episodes and posted them to the channel, as well as nearly 100 clips just from those episodes, posted all over, these different platforms that I just mentioned. And I felt like today would be a great time to go through and just discuss with you guys some of the top lessons that I've learned from these really heavy hitters that I've had as guests. And every guest has surprised me with something that they've said. I've learned things from every guest, even with those who I already felt like I knew quite a bit about their field. And being able to talk with these people who are experts on their subject, who know so much more than me, and being able to learn from them has been just honestly insane. I feel like at this point, I might as well just be doing the podcast for myself because I've learned so much and I've met so many cool people. And the first person that I talked to was actually a friend of mine named Wyatt. And if you haven't seen that episode, go ahead and watch that. Wyatt walked me through when he was actually buying a business after having a successful career for 5 years or so as a young professional. But he's just had this entrepreneurial itch that he has had to scratch. And I'm sure he's tried medication. It just hasn't done anything for him. But he just had to scratch this itch and he had to grow something. But he didn't have something that he wanted to start from zero. And he knew that if he were to buy a business, then he would have a higher chance of success building something that's already proven. Something that I learned from Wyatt is, I'll just play the clip right now.
This guy calls me and he's like, hey, maybe I would consider less money. And this is several months later. This is July. And I think the initial talks were in April.
So that more interested buyer, not that interested.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my dad and I kept talking to people about it. And they're like, Wyatt, just remember, you don't have to buy a business. They need to sell a business. You don't need to buy one.
You have a job.
Yeah, exactly.
A good job.
Yeah.
Where you can likely get promoted and make plenty of money in a career.
And I got a great promotion around this same time.
Yeah.
It was a 13 or 14% promotion.
Yeah.
So it was oh man, even more incentive to stay.
Yeah. I don't need this. He said no, whatever. Powell.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, let's go boating. Right?
And it wasn't really Wyatt that said it because it was his dad. But, Wyatt teaching me that you don't actually have to buy a business. They might have to sell a business, but you don't have to buy one. And I feel like sometimes as we, those who have the entrepreneurial itch that we need to scratch, we spend time on BizBuySell or other brokerage websites, and we maybe see a listing that we just get attached to, and we think, oh, I need to buy that business. But we don't have to buy a business. And if the numbers aren't working out, or if there's some other reason we're like, hey, this is a red flag, I don't know if I should do this, you don't have to buy a business. They maybe need to sell a business, but we don't have to buy a business. I also thought it was interesting that he was so willing to open up about some of the marital challenges that being a business owner has. I feel like it's something that a lot of people don't talk about, the strain on a relationship that owning a business can have. But even a small business, and especially one that's not yet profitable, like this podcast, I'm up late right now, and my wife is going to be delivering our second child in a day and a half. My wife is sleeping. I'm up late working on podcasts. It's a struggle sometimes to be present with family, but also thinking about booking the next guest and researching them and thinking about what else you should be doing to grow. And it's tough. And Wyatt's in a position where he's out of the house all day, every day, and he's not really seeing his family as much. And I really appreciated the reality that he shared of just owning a business, and especially a blue-collar services business where it's not like he's home in the office or something like I am. He's out working for clients, and he doesn't get that time with his family as much. But the hope is, that this investment, this sacrifice that he's making is going to pay off later. And I really respected him for being willing to open up about that and to share that part of his life on camera with everybody. The second guest that I had was Nicole Harrop, and Nicole has kind of a massive following on LinkedIn. She has over 10,000 followers, and I guess it's not massive because there are some creators who have like hundreds of thousands of followers. But as far as like the Utah influencer space goes, she's one of the biggest, without being like some tech CEO. And so I really respected her opinion, especially as someone who is also in the podcasting space and who provides career advice to men and women, but is especially focusing on the niche of empowering women within the business world. It's not something that a lot of people focus on, and I wanted to get her perspective on the landscape of current business environment, current hiring market, and then also just hear more about her story. And I feel like she had a very interesting story where she didn't have the best upbringing. She didn't go into a ton of details on camera. We talked a little bit more off camera. She had a little bit of a tough upbringing, but she's still found success in her life, in her family, and in her career. And she hasn't let maybe a rough start keep her from becoming the person who she is today. And I thought that was very admirable. That she was willing to acknowledge that, and then also I think inspire those who maybe also feel like they're not they're not starting the race at the same line that everybody is, that everyone else is, but they're still willing to push themselves to run as fast as they can in this race, and to become the best version of themselves. And so I really thought that was, I thought that was impressive to hear from her. And then the episode with Nicole kind of turned into like how to use LinkedIn to get your next job episode, which wasn't really the intention, but the two of us, we spend plenty of time on LinkedIn, and I thought it was really interesting the story that she shared about how she posted about not getting this job, even though she was totally qualified for it, and that post went sort of viral, and the hiring manager for that job actually saw the post, saw it, oh yeah, this person is super qualified, and then reached out to her, and she eventually was offered the job. And I thought it was just a testament to how powerful LinkedIn can be for creating a network, gaining attention, and then just getting noticed by people who have opportunities for you that they don't even know you exist and you don't know that they exist. But there for sure are opportunities out there that if you do put yourself out there, they happen to find you. And I think that's really cool. And I think it's so interesting that on all these social media platforms, all these social network platforms, LinkedIn has maybe the lowest percentage of active accounts, where less than 1% of people on LinkedIn are posting regularly. They may be lurking. They might be looking at your posts. They might be scrolling through the feed, but they aren't actually posting anything. And I think that's kind of maybe a tragedy. Not to be too dramatic, but I think that recruiters, especially in this like tough job market, that it seems like we're always in a tough job market, but recruiters are using LinkedIn as a search engine. Just like you Google something, a recruiter is searching for candidates on LinkedIn. And I think that people are missing out on the opportunity to be marketing themselves as a search result. And so if you want a new job, if you want to be found by someone, then you should be optimizing your LinkedIn profile, including your posts, to be promoting you as a top result in their searches, And the nuances of that are a little easier said than done, but the basics of it are so simple. Of like have a good picture, have somewhat of a background image. Really, it could be like mountains or a city, but have something. It doesn't even matter what your background is, but it matters that you have something. You just need to look like you created a profile, not just made an account. And then with your job history, you need to have the details, like turn your, take the bullet points off of your resume and just put them into your work history on LinkedIn. Add any certifications that you have to your LinkedIn, because hiring managers can search by people who have these certifications or people who have these degrees. And then finally, having posts that kind of establish you. You don't have to post all the time, but like once a month, I feel like that's not asking too much, but posting once a month and just establishing yourself as an authority within your niche, within your industry, and on some certain topic where you gain some level of interaction on your posts. Like LinkedIn will feed your post to people outside your network for sure. It happens all the time. And if you can create that experience for yourself, then you will be a much more attractive candidate when you're looking for a job. And I could go much deeper on the LinkedIn subject, but that's not really the point of this. But Nicole had a great way of talking about her success on LinkedIn and how she's been able to help other people get that same success. So I really appreciated just her perspective and her stories regarding LinkedIn, especially. Episode 3 was Patrick McMillan, and Patrick is a fractional CFO. He works for Amplio that provides fractional executive services, which I think is a super interesting business model. Definitely check out that episode to hear a little bit more about that. But then one of the insights that Patrick shared that I thought was super interesting was I was curious about how he participates in venture capital deals. So what venture capitalists will do is they will invest a certain amount of money for a percentage of your company. And they're hoping that they can get in early enough to where if they acquire 5% ownership in your company, that 5% ends up being worth millions of dollars down the road. That's kind of the whole concept behind venture capital. And with Patrick, since he has been involved in venture capital deals where he is an investor there, I was curious about what defines a company worth investing in. And I thought this was really interesting. He said that he would rather invest in an A+ person with a C+ idea than an A+ idea with a C+ person. And what he meant by that is that, there are so many great ideas out there. Surely all of us have had one of them, but there's not as many great operators. There's not as many great executors. And sometimes when you meet someone who maybe this idea isn't that unique, it's not that incredible, maybe the opportunity isn't massive, it's worth riding the wave with that person because you believe in that person, even if you don't believe in that idea as much. It's maybe a little counterintuitive and not what you would expect from an investor who is putting their money on the line. But, I was thinking about it afterwards and I totally get it. Think about all the group projects that you've been involved in with school or work. And really, it doesn't matter what the project is. If the people suck, I do not want to do that project. It could be the easiest project in the world or the hardest project in the world. If I don't like the people and if I don't believe that they are a good fit on the team, then I don't want to be involved in that project. And on the flip side of that, if the people are awesome, they're rock stars, and they will carry me when I am weak, they will be the Sam to my Frodo, I will be with them till the end. It doesn't matter what project we're going to be on. If the people are awesome, then I'll work with them all day. It doesn't matter what we're doing. So I totally get what he was saying there. And honestly, I'm an advocate at this point for what he was saying. And another thing that I learned from Patrick is he's in love with the word iterate. And what he meant by that, or at least what I understood he meant by that, is that if you iterate on something, then that equals learning. Whether you're successful or whether you fail, iterating is learning, or at least the opportunity to learn. And I feel like so many people these days are just stuck in analysis paralysis where they're not taking action on anything. They don't know what to do, so instead they do nothing, which is the exact opposite of what you should be doing. If you want to grow, if you want to learn, if you want to figure out what you like in life, then you need to get out there and do something about it. So I really appreciated Patrick's take on just iterate. Whether it's meant for you or whether it's not meant for you, you need to go out there and figure it out. And his story about that was kind of related to him not getting his CPA designation, while a lot of other people do get their CPA designation in order to be a CFO. But he doesn't have a CPA. Instead, he just got way more hours of practice. And similarly, if you want to find out your interests in life, then you need to take action and go and try it out. The 4th episode was with Levi May, who is the COO of Brava Brands. And specifically, what I was most interested in was one of their child companies, Brickloot, which offers Lego subscription boxes. Levi's episode actually didn't perform very well, and there's a couple of reasons for that. I've had some tech issues caused by myself. They're more user error than tech issues. And so the last half of the episode, the audio is kind of garbage, which is so unfortunate because I feel like that's where so many of the heavy hitters, so many of the great things that Levi said were in the last half of the episode. So I wish I hadn't messed up the audio on that. But Levi is a great leader of people, and he really cares about his people, which is something that was so apparent in that episode. And if you want to learn how to be a better leader, go watch that episode. I'm sorry for the terrible audio about halfway through, but I promise it's worth the listen. And I've got a few things from Levi that I want to share. Number one, he said, as long as you're getting better every day, as long as you're learning and growing, then every day is the best day ever. And I thought, that's just so wholesome, you know? I thought it was so nice to hear. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like, I did get a tiny bit better at this. I haven't messed up the audio on this episode yet. And so why not? Why can't this be the best day ever? And then something else that Levi said was that people don't get burnt out when they're winning. I think I would change that, though, to people get burnt out when the cost of winning no longer outweighs the winning. So people can be winning. Because I feel like if the wins are small, but the cost of achieving them is high, then people are going to get burnt out. You know, even if they have these little wins, you know, there needs to be a level of success that outweighs the cost of achieving that success. And I think without that, people will at some point get burnt out. And then in his story about presenting to the executives, and I'll just play the clip here so you can hear that.
I was going in front of the board and trying to show them that I know how our costs break down. And I put a slide and I put a dollar bill and I put chunks of a dollar bill falling off. Mm-hmm. And I ran it past somebody and like, this is cute. They're not going to take you serious. Like, you are compromising your credibility by being too fun.
Even though you were accurate.
Yeah, even though it was accurate, like, you're right. Like, what is the audience? What is the purpose? What am I trying to do? And I wasn't just trying to make them understand our cost breakdown. I wanted them to trust me as an executive.
Honestly, I got kind of bummed out after thinking about this, you know, over the next couple of days after filming the episode. Levi is such a genuine person. And I just wish that he could have shared that part of himself with the executives. And I don't know if it's the environment of the company that he's in, or maybe just the false perspective that was shared with him about like, hey, if you do this, they're going to think that, you know, they're not going to take you seriously. I think if the visual is totally clear, you know, writing that balance of clarity and also fun, I am very in favor of him getting to share that, you know, and I think it sucks that he had to stifle that part of himself who wanted to show like, hey, I'm a fun person and I know what I'm talking about. I just wish that he could have shared that piece of himself, you know, even if it was just a silly little graphic. It's such a small thing where if that eroded the trust of these executives, you know, it's still concise, it's still clear, and it still conveys exactly what he meant it to. I massively prefer that over some, you know, little graph pulled from Excel. And I hate that he had to hide, you know, his personality when he totally could have shared that. And I think he should have. So, you know, just thinking about that and the culture that I want to help build at the companies that I work for and the companies that I build, I think that's so key to allow people to be themselves. And I think it creates an environment where people can trust each other. Because if he's not able to share, you know, just this small piece of his personality, then he's going to feel like he can't share other things and he can't be himself at work. And I don't know about Levi, but that's just not an environment that I would thrive in. And so just thinking about that some more, I wish that he could have shared that. And I think it's important for all of us to be aware of the kind of cultures that we're in and be aware of how we contribute to that. Next, episode 5, I had Nate Tingey, who is the VP of product at Nectar HR, which is the 8th fastest growing tech company in the country. And I also work in product for another small tech company. I am a product manager. That's my current job title. And I enjoy that work. And so it was kind of interesting to have someone else who is maybe, 5 or 10 years ahead of me career-wise. And I guess maybe that's a little ambitious to say, 5 years ahead of me. Age-wise, we're not too far apart. but he's accomplished a lot more in his career so far. And so it was very interesting to me, where I got to interview someone who is working in and excelling in my current career industry, my current niche. And something that I've been thinking about a ton lately, and something that Nate clarified for me, is speed. The competitive advantage is speed at Nectar HR, and for Nate specifically, like the systems that they have, they all facilitate speed. And I think that's so crucial. Just like the episode with Patrick, where we talked about iterating. The faster that you can iterate, the faster that you can execute on something, then the faster that you can learn from it as well. And Nate did a fantastic job just talking through the reality of, like, if you want to be a small, scrappy tech company who's fighting against these bigger players, then you do have to work faster. You have to make decisions faster. You have to gather data faster. And, that also leads into risk. Like if you want to be fast, then you have to make decisions with insufficient data. And really, and I posted this on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, but every big decision that I've ever made has been made with insufficient data, where I didn't have all the answers. And especially with Nate at Nectar, I think they do a great job of, they say we know enough to make a decision on this, and so we will act on it right now. And I think that's something that is missing at my company and a lot of other companies, where we get stuck in analysis paralysis, where we want to know all the details, or there's always some other question that needs to be answered, and rightfully so. Like, you should gather data before making decisions, but there comes a point where more data does not equal more clarity or more accuracy in predicting the future. It just doesn't. You can know all of the current data, and you do not know what's going to happen in the future. So you have to be willing to take those risks. And I think Nate and his team and Nectar do a great job of understanding the risk-reward trade-off, and it's working out for them. And specifically with Nate, he took a big pay cut and a big risk in quitting his prior job to come and work for Nectar. And I think that speaks to his personal belief and commitment to the mission of the company. And I guess that just got to me, like, I don't know everything about Nectar, but talking with Nate, like, he's either a great salesman or they really are doing great things there. I was convinced that, like, Nectar is building something great, and they're doing it in a very efficient way that is contrary to the way other tech companies work. And it's working better. And then the 6th episode was with a friend of Wyatt's, actually, Wyatt Devlin, who I interviewed first. This episode was with Wade Erickson. And Wade was awesome. His personality was just infectious, and I feel like we got along so well. Just the way that Wade approached problems, and the way that he was just committed to his values and really lived according to what's important to him. I think that was maybe the most impressive thing about him. We didn't get into it a ton during most of the interview, but at the very end, I did ask him about living on a sailboat for a year with his family. And imagine, like, just remember COVID, when you were locked up in your apartment or house or whatever with your family, and you saw them all day, every day. Imagine instead being on a sailboat with your family. You can't go to another room, really. You can't go across the street or outside to be by yourself. Now, this was a big decision. But in talking to him, it was abundantly clear that this decision brought his family closer together. And I really respect that. And I not only think it's really cool to live on a sailboat for a year and travel to all these coastal locations and, these tropical paradises, but I think it's super cool to be the person who you say you are. Like, while everyone else is talking about, oh, it would be so cool to go and do this thing one day, Wade is the kind of person who does it. He says that this is important to him, that he wants to spend this time with his family, and he does it. He makes it a priority. He gathered the data that he needed and executed on that. And, whether you would or would not also live on a sailboat with your family, I think it's extremely admirable to live your life in a way that actually mimics the things that you say you believe. Whether you agree with the action or not, you can't deny how true to himself that he was being. and how true to the things that are important to him he was being. And I really respected that. He's also a successful businessman who has owned at least 5 companies by now. And it was cool to get to hear about all of those. And I'll talk about those in just a second. But it really impressed me how true to himself he was. And it made me think in my own life, like, in what ways do I say one thing, or in what ways do I think this is important to me, but I don't actually follow through on that. And Wade just did a great job of, being the example, and so he kind of inspired me to do the things that I say I'm interested in, to actually spend time on the things that I say are important to me. And I hope, if nothing else from his episode, if you don't learn all these great things about business, at least you hopefully feel like, hey, I should be more true to myself and the things that I believe in. And then when it came to his businesses, I didn't really consider it at first to be an advantage necessarily. But his company, Easy Mobile Storage, is competing with, a multi-billion-dollar and multinational corporation in the form of Pods. And I always love a little, David and Goliath story. But Wade isn't trying to be dominant in the entire country. He's not trying to be a multinational corporation. What he is trying to do is be a really, really good solution in this region of the Intermountain West. And he's crushing it in that aspect. And I think it impressed me a little bit where he was saying that just being personable and being local is his biggest advantage. Where Pods, you can't put a face to Pods. And if you do have some issue, like you call customer service, and you're probably going to get someone who maybe has a different accent than you. And not that that matters necessarily, but the fact that he is local, you're like, oh, I know that guy, or my parents know that guy, or he lives around here, or in the next state over. It's like, even being from another state, that's still a local enough company for this type of thing, for a company that helps you move. And it struck me that in today's, digital age where we're all so connected but so far apart, actually providing a service locally is a differentiator. And it is a way that he's able to set himself apart from the competition. And that's, one of the reasons that people use him. With the two of us being from different generations and me living most of my life on the internet when it comes to school and work and play, I typically don't consider your geography as much of a benefit or a curse, because we can all be so connected. But it was just a reminder that, even in this digital world, it is still so important to leverage where you are. And as I'm having kids, and our next one is due like in 36 hours, we'll be induced and have our next baby. I need to think about, where am I raising these kids, and what opportunities am I placing in front of my kids because of where they're growing up. And for better or worse, it's shaping the core aspects of my life. I didn't plan on spending all this time in Utah, but now, I came here for school, stayed for work, and now here I am networking with so many people physically in Utah. And there are so many opportunities, with all these tech companies and other businesses coming and growing within Utah. It makes me consider that maybe my kids should grow up here and not in some other state that I've envisioned for them, that I maybe enjoy more. And that's not to say that I'll definitely spend the rest of my life in Utah, but that conversation with Wade especially has made me consider the advantages of being local, wherever local is for you. And if that's not an advantage in your version of local, then maybe you need to change what local means to you and what local area you actually live in. So those have been the lessons from the guests themselves. And then to all those who are thinking about starting a podcast, I just want to say that it's tough. This is basically at least a part-time job for me, if not a second full-time job. I think it's worth differentiating yourself. Like, in these days, everyone has a smartphone, and you should totally start with what you have. But if you are fully committed to this, there's a reason I film on 4K cameras. I've got this one and this one here, and I'm using them both on myself today. And I've got 3 different lights around me so I can achieve a certain look. I think it's worth differentiating yourself in the quality of the content, even if that means that in the first 6 episodes, you have issues with the audio in some way 4 out of the 6 times, if not more. We're still waiting to see how this one turns out. I stand by what I said in one of the, I can't remember which episode. It might have been Nate, it might have been Wade. But when thinking about entering an oversaturated market, the market is never oversaturated. You just don't have a competitive offer. If you focus on your offer and you make your offer competitive, then it doesn't matter if the market is oversaturated or not, because someone is always winning, whether it's undersaturated or oversaturated. It doesn't matter. You just need to get better. And I'm on episode 7 now, and I'm still getting better. But that's the end. If you like this behind the scenes, go ahead and drop a like on the video. The algorithm loves that. And I don't say this in the podcast episodes, but if you watch any episodes in the future, also just like the video. I try to leave a comment there worth responding to. And so if mine's not very good, just, place your own comment there instead. Maybe we can just start a little comment thread on yours instead of mine. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Especially everyone, if you made it this far, you guys are awesome. You're the best ones here. And I'll see you next time.